When I was a teenager, my family took a 2-week trip to Washington, D.C. and New York City. And somewhere along that trip, my dad taught me how to read metro system maps. Now, my dad was already pretty good with maps. When I was a kid, he taught me how to read road maps, state maps, highway systems, all the normal stuff. But subway maps are a little bit different. There are colors going each way, lines intersect, stations have names you've never heard before, and when you're in a new city you're trying to figure these things out all at the same time, it can get a bit confusing. Am I on the right line? Am I going the right direction? Am I getting off at the right stop? And if you're traveling with a group, there's also a little extra pressure because nobody wants to hear, well, I think we just went the wrong way. So over that trip, my dad and I learned the system together. Eventually, I could look at the map and say, we're taking the blue line this way, or we're switching here and getting off 3 stops later. It stopped being confusing because I had learned the system. Now, fast forward several years later. I was traveling again with my parents, but this time we were in Russia. And if a subway map in an American city can take a little while to understand, try doing it in a completely different country, in a completely different language, where you can't even pronounce half the station names. I remember getting to the metro in St. Petersburg and looking at my dad. I speak some Russian. He speaks none. And we thought, okay, we know how subway systems work. We just have to figure out this one. So we created our own little shorthand. Instead of trying to pronounce these incredibly long Russian station names, we'd say things like, we're going to take the green line towards the K name, or we're going to take the blue line towards the S name. We didn't know exactly what the words meant. We didn't even necessarily pronounce them correctly. Let me take that back. We definitely didn't pronounce them correctly. But we knew the system. And that's when something clicked for me. I didn't actually need to understand Russian to understand the metro system. I needed to understand how a metro works. I knew that trains travel along lines. I knew that lines have directions. I knew that stations come in a sequence. I knew that I needed to get on the right train and get off at the right place. The language was unfamiliar, but the system wasn't. And I think that's a pretty good metaphor for certain things in life. Because how often do we encounter something new and immediately get overwhelmed by the vocabulary? A new job, an industry, a responsibility or hobby, and something suddenly, everybody is throwing around acronyms and terminology and processes that you've never heard of before. And you start thinking, I don't know what any of this means. It can feel like Russian. But here's the thing. You don't have to understand everything to start moving forward. You just have to find the system underneath the vocabulary. Ask yourself, what is the actual goal? What am I trying to accomplish? What do I already know how to do that might apply here? Because chances are you didn't arrive at this new opportunity with absolutely zero skills. You already know how to solve problems. You already know how to communicate. You already know how to learn, and you already know how to ask questions. You already know how to figure things out. So you just use that as your foundation. You don't have to pronounce every station name perfectly before you get on the train. Sometimes you just need to know green line, this direction, and get off in 3 stops. And that's enough. And eventually something amazing happens. The map that once looked completely overwhelming starts to look almost normal. The words that once sounded like gibberish start to become familiar. The system becomes intuitive. And one day you look at the same map and think, this isn't complicated anymore. I actually know what a few of these words mean. It's just a subway map. So, if you're currently standing in front of something that feels completely overwhelming, remember this. Just don't get lost on the vocabulary. Find the system. Break the big problem into smaller problems. Use shorthand when you need to. Build on what you already know. You don't have to understand the entire map today. You just need to figure out which line you're on, which direction you're going, and what's the next stop. Because eventually, what looks like Russian today might become completely ordinary tomorrow. And at the end of the day, you don't have to know every word on the map. You just have to know how to get where you're going.